One of the earliest pieces of advice I got was mind the pence, the pounds take care of themselves. So I worked at a British bank, and the theme was a lot of the money that kind of leaves the organization, or a lot of the things people tend to overlook, are the small things. And that's really where we at Order started building. It's the consumables, it's the things you buy every day, and maybe it's the things you don't go to that 34th tab to check the price on. And now that AI has kind of come to the forefront, we've made that much more efficient, much more powerful. And what we're really seeing is that folks who are not taking advantage of this have been more at a disadvantage than maybe in the previous iterations of Order, where folks have really been able to use that as a competitive advantage.
3 years ago or so, when we really began to leverage AI in our sourcing process, a lot of this started to accelerate because as you as you send the AI out there and find more of these price points and cater to more customers and enter into more product categories, this just builds on itself and becomes easier and easier. So I think that that's what's really cool. I think we've entered into a phase for our business and our growth with the amount of spend that we process, the breadth of things that we purchase for our customers, that there's really very few areas of spend that we don't feel like we have some advantage or some offering we can give back to our customers by way of, savings, better decisions, all things we'll get into kind of later in the presentation.
Leveraging some of these large language models yields incredible insights. And then we combine that with normalization of SKU data or an inference layer on top of our data to start to understand predictive out of stock or predictive fulfillment issues to specific zip codes based on where fulfillment centers are. And then on top of all that, the contextualization. And I can't help but think that there really is this kind of proprietary series of steps that you really have to understand that makes the sum of these parts a lot more valuable and a lot more helpful than each one individually.
People are used to this concept of what they've seen, whether it be from ChatGPT or whatever it may be, where you input a question and it simply spits out an answer. So if you want to write a history essay, it certainly is pretty good at that. I think when it comes to delivering value for our customers, it obviously is a bit more complex because we're both trying to take into account the vastness of our data set and all of the richness that has to offer, but also the contextual knowledge about what that customer's preferences are, what good is to them, and ultimately, how do we take all of these things, push them up this pyramid here, and end up with a recommendation on how to optimize their purchasing. What we're able to do, especially when looking at the decisions we're making and our customers are making across our customer base and across our vendor network, is we can understand how much rewards we generate on a given recommendation, how often recommendations turn into returns for our customer, how often they generate tickets about questions about what may have happened. And all of this funnels back into our database and helps teach our AI sourcing algorithm how to behave in the future. To your exact point, we are using those learnings and that feedback loop at a global scale across our customer base. If we learn that a certain vendor is not reliable, that may be applicable to everybody, right? But if we learn maybe more specifically that a customer or a location always returns a given product if we were to recommend it, certainly we learn that quickly, and that is applied simply to that customer or location. And so there are multiple feedback loops with different scopes of interest there that we're always trying to take into account, and all with the outcome of better recommendations in the future and ones that are making your day more efficient. What we're going to do here is take our recommendations, take the power of what we've built, show those recommendations to the user, and allow them to opt in or opt out, depending on kind of what the recommendation is. I think it's also worth reiterating that we are always gunning for the best outcome for our customers, whether it be reliability of in-stock and delivery times, or consolidating packages across a given order so that it's easier to receive them when they show up. And so these are all things we're taking into account, and these are things that we think that if we surface to the user in this way, will become really obvious for people to pick what they feel is best for them at that moment.
If we can bring those recommendations to the forefront, it does build a much more sustainable equilibrium between the supplier side of the marketplace and the buyer side of the marketplace. And it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. So as we think about kind of the future of Order.co and the future of what the tools we have today will bring, I definitely see a lot of promise in what you're describing. And yes, it will absolutely be the best thing for our customer. But what is unique, at least in my perspective, is that it doesn't hurt other stakeholders on the marketplace.